here with my guest today, Allison Greene. She is the marketing director at HARDI. Allison, welcome to the show.
Caleb, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
For context, who is HARDI? What problems do you solve? Why do you exist in the world?
So HARDI is a wholesale trade association that is focused on providing services, support, communication for members who are companies in the HVACR wholesale distribution channel. So I know that's a mouthful, but essentially we've been around for 60 plus years in some fashion and really are working to support wholesale HVAC distributors and the different players in the channel. So that's suppliers, service vendors, sometimes it's more corporate subsidiaries, things like that.
And what is support defined as?
Support is defined as training programs. We do advocacy. We do really high scale events. We have like events that range from 2,000 people down to more like intimate, 15, 20 person events. And we also have a really robust market intelligence program. So we have access to the most I guess, up-to-date and industry-specific data. We've built that up over a number of years through surveys and just member programs where we, collect data from our different members. And then we also have access to different databases where we aggregate a lot of that information and turn it into insights that are mostly actionable for members in our community.
Awesome. And your personal mandate there, how do you define that?
So what I do on a day-to-day?
What do they pay you to do? What are you accountable for?
Yeah, so they pay me to deliver the most let's say, so they pay me to create an environment in which our members can engage most with our different value propositions. So with our market intelligence data, it's up to my team to make sure that it is timely, that it's in the right place, that it's speaking to the right people, that it's saying the right things. Same thing with advocacy, right? So we do a number of things both on the state and federal level that support our members, whether it's through, fighting legislative kind of pushback on the industry or regulatory pushback. So we advocate for our members in that regard. But mostly there, it's about making sure our members understand what that means. So interpreting different legislative and regulatory, I guess, initiatives at a level that our members can understand and act on. And then also the events portion falls under my purview as well. So we do, I said 4 to 6 different events throughout the year. We're really focused on creating a community in which our members can connect, share insights from what they've learned. And then we kind of use that as an opportunity to triangulate some of the things that we do through our training, our market intelligence, and our advocacy, and create more of like a holistic message for our members to become, to be able to leverage and become smarter business people.
Awesome. I can see the value why someone would want to become a member. And I think that that's ultimately your goal from a revenue standpoint, is get new members and provide the support and programming that they expect, and keep that. Can't be an easy job with, I imagine, quite a few members, but.
Yeah, it's interesting because we are a little less focused on, I mean, we obviously are always looking to retain new members, but we actually have a large percentage of the industry anyway in terms of revenue. So more of it for us is about engagement. So it's really, if you think about, we have X amount of members who are, already engaged with us. We just want to make sure that they're aware of and taking advantage of all of the opportunities that they can within our service suite, essentially.
What do you and your team use as a KPI or a set of KPIs to be able to tell you, hey, we're fulfilling our mandate appropriately, or we're not, as a marketing function?
Yeah, we have a scorecard, pretty generic name, but it's a very robust kind of bit of technology or reporting that informs us on exactly, I think there's 13 key metrics within that, and everyone in our company is very in tune with those key metrics. And a lot of it is based on understanding, which members are participating in which aspect, right? So like if you think about all the different like market intelligence programs that we have, down to the events, down to the training, track all of that. And it's not just like dollars, right? So for us, it's often not about revenue. It's more about engagement. I said earlier, but it's like looking to see Are we engaging companies, across the top? Are we engaging a certain number of employees down within that? So
Yeah.
kind of how we
Right.
look at
And so high scores would translate into what from a bit, like how does that support um, business growth for Hardy? I know you said it's not about the revenue, but where does it all come to an economic point?
Yeah, so we do have like sort of a weight, right? So different scorecard metrics are weighted differently.
Okay.
But for us, it is again, it's about looking at the engagement as an overall percentage. So that, if we have X amount of retained members who are engaged to a whatever, 86%, that's
Yeah.
great, right?
Right.
So we have members who are only doing one thing, maybe they're only attending one event per year and that's all they do.
Yeah.
Um, but we basically have sort of like an internal formula that says like, hey, these members will remain retained if
Right.
they are at X level of engagement.
Right. Got it. I love it. I like the
Yeah.
business space. So that's where you are now, and that's what you're doing. Give us a bit of an understanding about your journey as a marketer and a marketing leader from the beginning to now.
Sure, yeah. So I was born in Columbus, Ohio, kind of in the area. I'm an OSU grad. I started off thinking that I was going to go to law school. Had a little bit of soul searching, thought that might not be for me at that time. And so I ended up being, just a professional writing communications person. And I actually cut my teeth at like a PR agency that evolved more into like a digital marketing agency. So I was there for probably about 5 or 6 years, and it was a small like kind of mom and pop shop. But I loved working for like the entrepreneurial type
Yeah.
people. I loved learning like the different aspects of running the business. When I was there, I started off doing like account management, which I really liked, the I guess the interpersonal skills that you gain while doing that. A lot of the projects that I loved were like, I would almost say like passion projects. We did a lot of nonprofit work. So like I would work for companies in Vancouver or the, British Columbia, and we would help them develop their corporate social responsibility program. So it was all about like building a communications plan from the ground up and helping these companies who were um, you know, becoming more ingrained within their local communities and helping them like identify the nonprofits that they wanted to support, and then building up communication plans to support those communities and those nonprofits. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. And I kind of like did the marketing for that, and the writing, and the copywriting, and the design, and the account management, and all of that. And then after that, I kind of went on to work for more traditional corporate jobs. I just kind of wanted to branch out. Then I found myself really enjoying like the industrial and like the manufacturing side of things. I worked for Toyota for a little while, not automotive, but commercial equipment. So that was really interesting. And I just really fell in love with the whole like distribution element. And the people there I thought were really cool, and I really enjoyed telling a story for, the non-sexy
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
then I found my way here into HVAC. So I went from
That's
from
awesome.
forklift to HVAC, which I think is kind of funny.
That's great. For you right now, I mean, most things as in business and marketing, we hope are good. And I imagine based on, the sterling reputation Hardy has, a lot of things are going on. What is your top marketing challenge right now? The thing that keeps you up at night the most, thing where if you had a magic wand and could wave it and it would disappear forever, what would it be?
Top marketing challenge today. I would say just reaching and continuing to engage with an ever evolving audience, right? So for us, we have kind of a finite number of companies in our audience that we can actually engage with, right? There's only so many wholesale HVAC distributors out there.
Yeah.
The turnover in the industry is kind of high. And, we mostly work through like headquarters and executive teams, but we're trying to become more sticky with the associates and the personnel at a different level.
Yeah.
And, you only have so much time to really like gain people's attention and promote like this really kind of abstract value proposition, right? Like we don't have like a gadget or a widget that we're turning over. We
Yeah.
have this sort of like long-term health, I would say, or I guess well-being that we promote.
Yeah.
And having to make your case to each new person to solve each new issue, every day is kind of where I think we get, a little stuck sometimes.
When, and you'll have to educate me a little bit on this and our listeners, but when, let's say, engagement was lower than ideal or lower than expected, what would that mean in terms of repercussion for the going concern that is HARDI or any association like this?
Yeah, so it's sort of like it's almost like a cycle, right? So we put out what we get in, right? So for us, a lot of it is market intelligence I talked about. So we have to understand, we have to have a two-way communication with our members. So the more engaged they are, the better information and intel we get, and the better we are positioned to help the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
So we have, I would say, like, I don't know, four-ish core survey or market intelligence products that we use. And a lot of that, the quality of those is based on our members understanding the reason and the why behind participating in them.
Right.
So it kind of depends on the different product, but say we have a survey that's all about like the higher level like business performance. We really have to make a case to say, hey, we want you to understand why this is important, why this helps not only you, but your fellow distributors and the industry as a whole.
Right.
So that's kind of how
Yeah.
that goes.
And so if like you get a scorecard back and for a certain section of the membership engagement is low, does that become the priority to bring that up? And if it doesn't, what happens?
Oftentimes, yeah. So we, especially with our training, so we'll kind of talk about training too. So for training, it's, we've really grown that, I guess, pillar of our business in the last few years. And one of the concerns is that, if we don't if we don't have as many engaged distributors in our training programs,
Yeah.
then we're not getting the feedback and we're not getting the momentum that we need. And so if we see that participation is low, it's kind of an all hands on deck in terms of like pivoting and making sure that are we offering the right product? The nice thing about being an association is that we're relatively nimble and, we can turn a lot of things around. So we adjust daily, right? So if our training isn't resonating with our members, we learn why and we can adjust, course correct pretty
Yeah.
quickly. But yeah, I think to answer your question maybe about, disengaged members is always a concern of ours. We rarely and luckily, knock on wood, have members that don't renew their dues. Like that's just not a problem that we've luckily had in the last few years, but that is a risk. So we just try to make ourselves be as relevant as possible in every aspect,
Right.
so that we keep that engagement up across the organization.
You own a majority of the market today. Have you seen any recent sort of competitive forces coming in? Whereas if somebody did not renew, there is other options.
Yeah. So there are a number of other associations who are sort of like in alliance with us. Association politics is so funny. But there are a number of other associations who are sort of aligned, right? So they are either not a lot do exactly what we do. So there's not a huge like risk of competition in that regard, but there are sometimes some crossover. So there may be some industries or some associations that work within other industries who may be offering different networking opportunities than we would, that might be somewhat appealing to our members. There are many, many, many other training options in the world. That is probably the most competitive market that we face, is the training. But again, we feel pretty confident that our training is built off of very industry specific data. You know, we have the most trained experts within the HVAC space. And then we build a lot of our curriculum off of the market intelligence and like the economic data that we collect that's very industry specific. So we're
That's
pretty well positioned there. But
That's great. I really am obsessed with the idea of understanding across different industries the main function that a marketing system has. And it's become quite clear in your case that you and your team have your North Star focused on maximization of engagement. Because when that happens, that becomes a asset that the organization can leverage. With no engagement, there's not a lot that can be
Mhm.
done in terms of growth, right?
Correct. Yeah. Um, One of the other things that's kind of interesting is that we have consolidation. So as an industry, we started, or sorry, as an association, we started off really serving like more of a mid-sized business. And throughout the years, a lot of those mid-sized businesses, those family-owned businesses have consolidated. You know, I mean, we've had 40, 50 years for the mom and pop HVAC distributors to sort
Yeah.
of grow and kind of eat each other up. And that is it's good and bad. It has like a lot of upsides for us, but one of the downsides is that, you know, maybe those companies relied on us for outsourcing certain things like consulting or, you know,
Right.
the training or market intelligence, but now they're bringing a lot of that in-house. We find that we still actually have really good retention rates among the larger distributors, and so that's really good. But to your point, yeah, I mean, without engagement, we don't exist.
Got it.
We fail to serve a purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Shifting outside of Hardy now, and you can leverage examples from previous or now, what have you learned about yourself over your career? And more specifically, what have you realized is Allison's top superpower as a marketing leader?
Oh. I would say I've learned when to let things go that are just not in my wheelhouse, right? I've had a lot of jobs where, oh, we hired a new marketing person. She's going to do our video and our design. And I'm like, oh no, no, that's not me. I know when to leverage a designer or a videographer or whoever the expert is. So I think that was a big challenge for me in my first few years of my career, was learning to not try to boil the ocean, right? You can't do everything yourself. You can't be an expert at everything. You just have to maybe become an expert at knowing who is the right person for each task. And I think that's something I've really honed in on a little bit. And then I really think I'm pretty good at the messaging aspect. So I've always worked outside of kind of my time with suppliers and manufacturers. I've always worked for companies where we had a mouthful to tell, right? Like, so you have an elevator pitch and you have to explain why your organization is going to benefit the consumer or the member or whoever it is. It's not always just like it's not always a one size fits all or a one solution or one little thing is going to solve your problems. It's like a long-term thing. So I've become really good at helping my team and our sales team by extension tell a story that connects a complex message for complex
I love it.
value. Yeah.
Having messaging as a strength is critical and so under appreciated, right? I think most organizations believe that they have an awareness problem when in fact they have a messaging or an offer problem, and
Oh
that's
gosh.
it, right? Question for you. Being able to say no to certain things or at least communicate clearly where your zone of genius is, why is that a challenge for so many marketing leaders, and why does that even need to be a conversation, do you find? Like, is it that most business leaders think that the definition of marketing is X and you must fit into that? Or why is this a constant theme I'm hearing about?
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of leaders, maybe outside of the traditional marketing function, assume that marketing is all, you know, it's all branding, it's all the logo, it's all the, you know, it's the video, like
Yeah,
it can all just be done. And I also think it's sort of it's a creative area where a lot of people who are traditionally outside of that function think that they have a great idea, right? Like I think that it's easy for like an executive team to walk in and say like, oh, well, we just do this, you know, like I don't think they really consider the complexity that's involved with creating collateral and messaging and the audience and the plan and, you know, the timing and being in the right place. I
yeah,
think that they don't consider all of that, and they just think make some collateral, you
right,
know, like
right.
I have been a little luckier, or I guess more fortunate in my last few roles where that's not so much the case, but I don't know. I think it just happens.
Yeah. It's a requirement to be able to stand up and say no, and here's why. Otherwise, I'm disservicing the organization by just being a yes ma'am or yes man, right, to everything. That's a tricky one. Tell me a little bit about your team. Most of my guests are operating and fulfilling their mandate with a lean team. Tell me about the things that are going very well and some of the challenges you have operating in that world of leanness.
Yeah, so we have 3 people on my team. I have a content manager, I have a brand manager, and an event planner. Again, the events function rolls up directly through me for a number of reasons. That was kind of an interesting one. I'm new to events. That's not something I'd
Oh
ever
yeah.
done on scale. So I've learned a lot and grown a lot in the last couple of years. But I guess I'll kind of go start with the content and the brand manager. So when I first started, we just had, I don't even remember what her title was. It was something like a designer. I don't know, but she
Okay.
was doing a lot, and then it was just the 2 of us. And then we were doing a lot, we were doing all of the email marketing, all of the tracking, all of the lead gen, all of the website, all of the social, all of the,
Yeah.
all of the video, all of that. And so, I thought, it would be really, 'cause we are a very content heavy organization, right? Like a lot of what we offer is news. It's insights from our subject matter experts, whether they're like the market intelligence guys, or they're the regulatory guys or gals, or the training guys or gals. And so a lot of what we offer to our members is just, you know, content where they can read and understand the latest trends in the industry, maybe understand a little bit better what other companies are doing, but we have to be the consolidator of that news. We have to be the ones who can discern whether this article that's happening out here from this other trade publication is relevant and what it means for our members. We have to interpret a lot of that. And so we needed to have some sort of like a content manager. And what I really wanted to do was bring somebody in who was not just, doing traffic control, but was critically thinking about what we were saying in the industry, and having one person be the sort of keeper of that
Yeah.
was really helpful. So yeah, adding a content manager to our team was awesome. And then that allowed our designer, who was like, that was her, her background was the graphic design, and she does fantastic things with systems, which I'm really lucky to have somebody who has that sort of like dual skill.
Mhm.
But things have really, really improved for us since we've grown that team in that regard, because now we have somebody who is managing like the brand in terms of visual and aesthetic, and sort of like the way we manifest our messaging through our different channels. But I also have somebody who's really, really focused on the message.
Yeah.
So that's
That's awesome. I love to ask marketing leaders about their approach to building and supporting A teams. And as part of that, I think that a marketing leader's skill set needs to go into when you have a team in place, how do you understand or identify where are the gap areas that exist and what do I do about those gap areas? What's been your playbook on that? What are the gap areas and how do you think about solving them? Either ignore them as gaps because we don't need them or resource them in some way or another. What's been your approach?
Yeah, so I think, I've always been a big proponent of professional development, right? So, if you're fortunate, you work for an organization that provides you some budget for professional development sometime. And so I like to really let people explore that, but kind of like in their own way. I don't like to bring people onto my team and then force them to become a data head if they're not a data head, right? Like I
Mm.
think you really have to understand like what your people are passionate about, what they want to do, and you have to work realistically within those realms. That said, I do think that there are, pushing people a little bit is huge, right? So, if we have to learn a little bit more about Google Analytics, then we're going to take a class together, and we all kind of try to get on the same page to answer whatever need that is. We let it play out for like a quarter or two, and if it's still not quite doing the job, then we reassess and come back and say, hey, do we have to have budget to bring in a consultant or a new software or whatever it is.
Right.
um I think it's funny that you said like to just ignore some gaps. I mean, there's definitely been some gaps that, I've ignored in the past. Every time somebody asks me for a podcast, I just ignore them.
That's awesome.
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's
Totally.
not just, hop on the phone with somebody every day. It's recruitment and outreach and all of the other things that follow that. So, um, yeah, I mean, I try to be, fail fast. I like to, find a new idea. I like to have everyone, bought in on why this is going to like help move the needle. And if
Hmm.
everyone, then we'll try something. I'm always like very open to trying a new thing, but if it's not going to work and it's, everyone's becoming miserable in the process, then we'll find a way around it.
Yeah. Failing fast in terms of trying things and seeing if they fit a business case, that's easier said than done. Tell me a little bit about your approach in failing fast. How do you put things through the lens of a business case to justify whether or not they're worth continuing investment or not?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll take events for an example. Like, so we, as an organization have had a few core events, right? But when I came on, I was like, maybe we change this up, maybe we can try a few different things. So, we always kind of scope out the actual like cost, is this
Yeah.
going to be a revenue driver? Is this going to be a loss leader? And if it is, or if it is going to be a revenue driver, we'll certainly pursue it. But if it doesn't work in the first year, like we may not try it again. There's not a lot of sacred cows, whether it's here or in my own mind, right? Like we'll change something pretty quickly. In terms of like other like marketing initiatives, there's been a few things that I've tried in the past from just like we are putting tons of resources in this. We've tried messaging from every different angle. We've tried reaching out with different people, or really used maybe like our business development to spearhead this. And it's just not working. I think I've always been a pretty realistic person when it comes to understanding like this isn't going to work. We either drop this initiative, we reevaluate whether this is even about like a valuable proposition for anybody, and we'll just get, axe it if it needs to be axed.
Yeah, very hard skill, very critical. Not being willing to cut things, after you've already started implementing them. It's like the sunk cost bias. So I can see
Yeah.
that as a strength in you based on what you shared. What about like, I don't think a lot of us as marketing leaders realize that when a team is involved, a big part of our mandate becomes empowering and motivating and organizing and leading people. What works very well for you naturally in terms of the team dynamics in your role in managing that, and what is a challenge that you're admittedly willing to open up about?
Yeah, so I'd say like first and foremost, like I try to have fun. Like we just have fun. I tend to be one of those people who brings everything. Like I feel like the weight of the world is always on my shoulders. And if something isn't going absolutely splendidly, then I
Yeah.
feel like I always own it. I feel like personally invested in everything that I touch. And I think sometimes like I think that might stress people out. Not everybody functions on that same wavelength, right? Like I try to be an overachiever or at least a high achiever. And that's just not everybody. I would say in the hiring process, I try to find other high achievers. But not every organization operates on that. Um, I kind of believe that's kind of, I said this earlier, but I believe strongly in understanding who your people are and like how they work, right? And if they're, like the kind of people who like to go be creative on their own or more introspective or more introverted, I like to try to give people that space to do that and explore their strengths within those kind of that within that environment that helps them. Um, and then I guess in terms of being like a motivator, again, I think it comes back to having fun. Like we really we try to hype each other up. Like I really like to celebrate the successes of my team. Whether they're small or funny or huge, like we do celebrations. Like if we hit like a really high goal, we try to like celebrate it, whether it's like with a little party or, like we try not to be corny. We're actually
Yeah.
small enough that nothing has to be that corny. That's the beauty of not working in corporate world, right? It's not like the meme where it's like pizza party. So we
Yeah.
get to actually
No, that's the worst. You can wear whatever you want on Friday. Like Thanks.
Yeah, we kind of get to avoid a little bit of that.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So
Yeah,
Allison,
so
well, yeah, sorry. I love a lot of the things you've shared in terms of how you're playing this game. Being willing to talk about the areas that are going well, the areas that are concern, your approach to team. I'm curious if you were to leave a question for our next guest, similar to you, similar scenario as you, what would you ask?
I would ask, considering that this is mostly for teams with, relatively lean resources, how do you find the medium between flying high and flying low, right? Like, how do you keep responsibility first and foremost and make sure everything, like all the details are taken care of and all the little things are moving smoothly, but how do you find time and headspace to be more strategic and start thinking outside of the box?
Interesting. Why do you ask that question? Why does that come to mind?
I ask myself that all the time because
So
I feel
flying high would be like taking shots at things that like thinking bigger, doing big things, but not at the expense of the foundational components of the marketing system.
yeah, I would say, I've gotten feedback from, former, bosses or mentors that is like, this is the feedback that I've received that, that I am incredibly responsible and I'm always worried about every detail, but sometimes I, could set, that comes at a cost to the ability to be more strategic or take bigger risks. You
Right.
just sometimes have to like let whatever it is that's not important fall behind in the rearview mirror, right? And
Yeah,
just focus on the next big leap. And you can't have all of your energy behind you and in front of you all of the time. So
that's right.
it's just a
Finding that
balance. And
balance. Yeah.
yeah,
I love the question, and I'll make sure to get you the answer when it gets answered. Um,
yeah.
Listen, Allison, I really enjoy what you're doing. I love your ability to, as you've grown, to understand that some things are meant to be ignored. That's the biggest challenge, right? It's like avoiding the random acts of marketing. I love that you prioritize fun and togetherness and culture amongst your team to get a job done. And one thing that really sticks out to me is what you mentioned about seeing this for your team, seeing this opportunity with HARDI is not just to do their thing and to hit the KPIs and bring engagement up, but also an area for them to grow and develop professionally. They won't be with you forever. So what role do you play in facilitating their growth? I think most leaders forget about that, and it seems to be core to your approach. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I would say, I try to get to know each person on my team and say like, okay, and I also am like a little like, maybe this isn't your area, right? I try to be as transparent as possible and say like, hey, we tried this, like it's not really maybe your thing, but this really is your thing. Like,
Yeah.
I try to like hype people up on that a little bit. And I know like, I don't want people to be here forever. We want them to be here for a long time, obviously, but it's no one wants to be in the same place. And I think there is incredible value in like creating a culture where people feel engaged and valued and challenged and like they had an opportunity to learn here. And so I try to give people the leg room to explore that, right? And if there's something that like, everyone has like that one little aspect of their job that they just don't want to do, right? We all have it. That's why they're jobs. But
Yeah.
I try to say like, hey, look, like this is just like, this is the one little thing. This is the doing the dishes and then go out and do whatever it is that you need to
Right.
do in this world or find a creative solution to this one problem that we're having. I think that's another one too, is like I try to say like, I don't really know, nor do I care how we get to this solution.
Right.
So let's explore it together, go back, see where you're having trouble, and then come back to me or the rest of the team and we'll try to troubleshoot. But I mean, I'm personally, I've seen such better results when trying that approach than having people like do it my way, you know?
That's great. Thank you for exemplifying strong marketing leadership, and thanks for sharing the way you're playing the game. It's my mission to elevate scenarios where I think it's being done well, so that we can keep adding legitimacy to this function and role. It already is there, but how can we do more by being great leaders? So thank you for sharing.
Yes, of course. This was so fun. I really look forward to watching some more of your interviews. They're very good.
Thank you. Everyone, my guest, Allison Greene, thank you so much.
Thank you, Caleb.